Today, Chief Mata is going to talk about the officer-involved shooting that occurred on Monday, May 31st. Chief Mata.
Thank you, Chris. And good morning. Is everyone ready? Ready to go? Okay. Good morning. Today we'll be providing you with preliminary information, including some details of what led up to the officer-involved shooting and the death of Demetrius Stanley on May 31st on the 1100 block of Tofts Drive in San Jose. Before I begin, I would like to say that any loss of life is tragic, and my thoughts and prayers are with the Stanley family and our community during this time. The investigation that led to the Tofts Drive officers on that evening of May 31st was an armed robbery and assault with a deadly weapon incident that had occurred in March on that same street. On March 12, 2021, an incident occurred between Stanley and another person stemming from a road rage incident, and that incident was captured on video by an uninvolved witness. During an exchange outside of their vehicles, Stanley approached the other driver, who was a juvenile. While holding a handgun with a laser sight on it, Stanley pointed the handgun at the juvenile victim, who had his hands held up over his head. Video evidence shows that the red dot from the laser sight was on the juvenile victim's head. Stanley then entered the victim's vehicle, rummaged through the center console, and took a replica handgun from the victim's vehicle. This act of taking the property at gunpoint turned this incident into an armed robbery. Robbery detectives using witness video were able to identify Stanley as the individual responsible in this robbery incident. A warrant for armed robbery was issued for Stanley's arrest. Detectives also placed information into our law enforcement database, directing officers to stop and seize the car Stanley drove during the robbery if it were encountered. On March 26th, deputies with the Santa Clara County Sheriff's Office observed Stanley driving the vehicle used in this incident. Deputies initiated a traffic stop and took Stanley into custody based on the robbery warrant. The vehicle was impounded by our department, and San Jose detectives responded and interviewed Stanley regarding this incident. During the interview, Stanley admitted to the armed robbery. He also told detectives that during the robbery, he had been armed with a replica firearm. The replica firearm he described did not match the description of the gun he used during the incident. Detectives also learned that he was a prohibited person by possessing any firearms due to a prior domestic violence incident. Stanley was booked in the county jail and bailed out the same day. Detectives then obtained a search warrant and searched Stanley's vehicle, and in the vehicle located a Springfield 9mm pistol with a red laser attachment and a black ski mask inside the vehicle. The handgun with the laser sight matched the gun used in the robbery investigation. After the pistol was located during the search of Stanley's car, detectives consulted with the district attorney's office, who filed criminal complaint charges against Stanley that resulted in the issuance of a new arrest warrant. The new warrant included additional charges of assault with a deadly weapon, possession of a firearm by a prohibited person. On the night of the officer-involved shooting, 2 undercover detectives were conducting follow-up in plain clothes to confirm details of Stanley's residence and whereabouts. One plainclothes officer was walking on foot on Tofts Drive when Stanley came out of his house and began walking towards them while holding a handgun. The officer heard the sound of a handgun being racked and loaded. The officer then ran away from Stanley as fast as he could in order to avoid a confrontation. Stanley stopped, then tucked the firearm into his shorts and walked back towards his residence. As Stanley walked back towards his house, he passed an unmarked vehicle where a second plainclothes officer was seated. The officer knew Stanley was armed and did not attempt to exit the vehicle or confront him. Stanley initially walked past the vehicle with his gun tucked in his shorts. He then walked directly back towards the officer's vehicle. Stanley pulled out his gun using one hand and opened the officer's driver's door with the other. Evidence shows Stanley pointing the handgun directly at the officer. Fearing for his life, the officer fired his weapon at Stanley. This entire incident was captured by a home security video. We will be showing the video because this incident has become an incident of extraordinary public interest, as demonstrated by last night's protests and information stating that our officers shot and killed an unarmed individual. As with all officer-involved incidents or officer-involved shootings, we will be releasing a community briefing video in the coming weeks as directed and dictated by recent legislation, Assembly Bill 748. The handgun recovered at the scene on the night of the shooting was a 9mm unregistered, non-serialized ghost gun with an illegal high-capacity extended magazine. The handgun was loaded with one round in the chamber and multiple rounds in the magazine. The undercover officers involved in the incident were not wearing body cameras due to the non-enforcement nature of their assignment that evening. There was no plan to arrest or make contact with Stanley or to take any enforcement action whatsoever. When our covert officers engage in apprehension and enforcement efforts, our policy dictates that the body-worn camera will be used. This is a traumatic incident for the family of Demetrius Stanley, for all the involved officers, and for our community. Our officers did not want or anticipate a confrontation that night and did everything possible to avoid having one. Unfortunately, the officers have no control over the actions of others. The determination of this shooting was lawful and just. The determination of whether this shooting was lawful and justified will come from the district attorney. A joint criminal investigation by the Santa Clara County District Attorney's Office, the San Jose Police Department's homicide unit, is currently underway. The case is being monitored by the San Jose Police Department's internal unit, the City Attorney's Office, and the Office of the Independent Police Auditor. The involved officer has 14 years of experience and has been placed on routine administrative leave. And due to the officer's assignments and their safety in that assignment, we will not be releasing the officer's name at this time. We're going to play the video. We're going to play the video for you guys now. The firearm that was recovered at the scene. I will not take any questions.
Did your officers announce their presence of who they were?
Given the situation, how rapidly it was evolving, I don't believe the officers had any time to make any notifications.
Chief,
and that's under investigation as well.
you said that he had bailed out of jail. He was a suspect in an armed robbery from March. Why weren't they there to arrest him at that time a couple of days ago? Why just do surveil?
That's the nature of police work. We do surveillance, or we gather information, intelligence, in order to make an apprehension at a later date. Again, their intention, their purpose for being there is to gather that intelligence and that data information in order to make an apprehension at a later time.
What kind of information were they trying to gather?
Residents, vehicles, whatever is necessary to take someone into custody.
Chief, can you talk about what happened in the family house? It said that they were detained, the house was ransacked, and they were not told about Stanley's status, that he was deceased. Can you talk about what happened in the house? And if you would change anything if you could.
Sure. I'm not aware of what happened inside the house. I know that a search warrant was obtained for the house, so a search was conducted of the residence. I don't know if the family was told. I know they were told at a later point, but generally a good practice or good idea not to traumatize the family if, whatever a crime scene that we have. So we'll look into what we need to do better to make any notifications. And just to go off of that too is the police department doesn't make any death notifications. It's usually the job of the coroner that makes that notification.
Given that this started as an intended surveillance, intelligence gathering, and it ended with the subject dying, did this have to happen?
Like I mentioned, police work is dangerous. We didn't intend for these circumstances to occur. When confronted, like the officers were confronted, they made a decision based on the facts that they observed. But no, it wasn't intended to go this way.
Do we know if he was under any kind of influence, taking this action against the officers? Is there anything we know?
I have no information for that.
How exactly did the officers respond? Can you give us more details as to how the confrontation looked?
Well, the confrontation that we saw, as I know it, is based on the video. Right. I'm not going to go into the officer's statements. That's being investigated by the district attorney.
Chief, you stated that the other officer ran away. Where did he go? Did he go down the street, or was he in the area, or was he able to see what was going on, knowing that the other officer was in the car?
Right. So again, as I mentioned, he was on foot. He ran, I believe that was westbound on the Tufts, and then he went northbound on that adjacent street. So he ran out of sight.
And the other officer was sitting in the car, trying to be low profile.
He was sitting in the car. Yes.
Chief, we're hearing reports that Stanley felt like he was being stalked, or that his family members were being stalked, and that he was coming out just to protect them because he didn't know who these two individuals were. Your thoughts on that?
Sure. I'm not aware of any reports by the family or Stanley that of any threats or any stalking that we're aware of during this investigation. Again, I'm not aware of any those type of incidents.
I'm sorry. He felt that the two officers, the plainclothes officers who were there, they were the ones that were stalking him at the time.
That's going to come out in the investigation. They weren't stalking him. They were there simply to gather information. As we saw in the video, there was only one officer that was on foot, and the other one was in a car.
What thought do you have about the idea that, given that these officers were in an unmarked car in plain clothes and, like you said, didn't have a chance to announce themselves, from the outside, this looks like this is being portrayed in some quarters as someone trying to, ward off potential suspicious people in their neighborhood since he lives there. I mean, what is your thought on that? Because it doesn't sound like, can you speak to whether there's any sense that he knew he was confronting police when this unfolded?
I can't speak to what his thoughts were or beliefs were. I can see where if someone sees something that's out of the ordinary in their neighborhood, but you know, to confront someone with a firearm, I think whether it's officers or not, I think that's you know, something that's dangerous. Someone that confronts another with a firearm.
Estamos transmitiendo en vivo ahora mismo para Univisión. ¿Podría también decir exactamente qué fue lo que pasó en español?
I'll give you, or myself or the PIOs will give you a Spanish translation afterwards.
Back to sort of what they were doing. He's already been arrested, bailed, released, awaiting court for this armed robbery. So what are they, I mean, was there an additional charge that they were investigating? Because it would appear he's already been arrested, put in jail, bailed out. He's just waiting to go to court and have a trial.
That's not accurate. So what I said was that he was arrested originally for robbery, bailed, and then there were additional charges in conjunction working with the district attorney that were filed. So there was an arrest warrant that was issued for his arrest, not only in that robbery, but the additional charges as well.
Is there any message you have to any protesters who might take to the streets this afternoon or this evening?
I mean, there, you know, any protests or anyone expressing their opinions, we welcome that as long as they're peaceful. We understand their hurt and pain that they're experiencing, but we want to make everyone here in the city safe. We want to make sure that everyone in the city is safe, and if they can do that, and if I can be of help or support to them, I can do that. I'm open to that.
Giving any advice to your business owners in the area, if there is, some of these large-scale protests, what they should do, whether they should be boarding up windows, being concerned about?
You know, we haven't thought that far, nor have the protests gone to that level.
Did San Jose PD follow all the protocols, given the fact that they were surveilling a suspect? Were there any errors in that effort?
As part of the investigation, there's two separate investigations, an administrative to determine if our officers follow policy, so we're looking into that. And then the other side is the criminal investigation is being handled by the district attorney. So once those investigations are complete, then we'll take a look at that. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
That video, Chief, would that be made available to us?
Yeah, we'll talk with our media folks. Like I said, we usually put that out per AB 748. Thank you.
Thank you.